Everyone casts at the big boulders, but trophy brown trout are resting in a 6-inch reverse current pocket just behind the seam. If you can't read microcurrents, you're walking past the biggest fish in the river. Whether you're throwing spinners, fishing crankbaits, or fly fishing nymphs, reading microcurrents is the skill that separates the anglers who find fish from the ones who just find water. This is the science of Eddy hydrodynamics, the invisible architecture of moving water, and the reason a 70-year-old man pulled a 44-pound brown trout out of a New Zealand canal on 6-pound test line. Start with what's actually happening beneath the surface. When fast water collides with the upstream face of a boulder, it has to accelerate around the sides. That acceleration creates a low-pressure zone directly behind the obstruction, a hydraulic shadow. The river essentially creates a vacuum that the surrounding water rushes back to fill, producing a gentle, often reverse-flowing current. That's the eddy. A pocket of calm in the middle of chaos. For a trout, holding in that zone is the equivalent of stepping out of a gale-force wind into the quiet lee of a building. Minimum energy, maximum access to food drifting past on the adjacent fast current. But here's what most anglers get wrong. They see the big rock, they cast behind it, and they think they've done their job. Trout don't just hide behind structure. They position themselves at the exact hydrodynamic node where caloric intake exceeds metabolic cost. That's not poetry, that's peer-reviewed biology. Research published in the Journal of Experimental Biology found that brown trout parr reduced their swimming distance by 60 to 70% during peak flow by occupying specific positions around cobbles, using behaviors called bow riding and end training. They weren't just avoiding current, they were harvesting energy from it. And this brings us to one of the most remarkable discoveries in fish locomotion, the Kármán gait. In 2003, Dr. James Liao published groundbreaking research showing that rainbow trout voluntarily alter their body kinematics when interacting with environmental vortices. Behind a cylinder in flowing water, a series of alternating vortices forms called a Kármán vortex street. Trout swimming in this vortex street adopt a completely unique pattern of movement, activating only their anterior red axial muscles and abandoning the normal wave of muscle activity that drives undulatory swimming. They're not drafting, they're extracting energy from the river itself. And then came the dead fish experiment. In 2004, Liao discovered that a dead trout placed in a Kármán vortex street exhibited body motion qualitatively similar to a live, freely swimming trout. The dead fish generated thrust. Think about that. Millions of years of evolution shaped the trout's body into a form so perfectly tuned to river hydrodynamics that it can passively harvest energy from vortices without a single firing neuron. So how do living trout sense these microcurrents with such precision? Through the lateral line system, a sensory organ unique to aquatic vertebrates. Distributed along the body are clustered hair cell bundles embedded in gel-like domes called neuromasts, each capable of sensing local flow velocity. This system creates spatial temporal images of nearby hydrodynamic signatures, detects water flow around the body, maintains stability in turbulent currents, and locates obstacles, prey, and predators using reflected waves. Studies from 2006 confirmed that trout with a blocked lateral line spent significantly less time Kármán gaiting, proving the lateral line isn't optional for this behavior. It's essential. If you want more films like this, subscribing genuinely helps. And if there's a river or species you want covered next, drop it below. I read every one. Now, brown trout specifically deserve attention because they are a different animal entirely when it comes to positioning. Brown trout, especially large adults, are solitary and fiercely territorial. A big brown will own its haunt, and the critical threshold is 30 centimeters. Once a brown trout crosses that mark, it transitions to piscivory. Its growth rate jumps to 9 to 11 centimeters per year, and it stops caring about hatches. It's hunting other fish now. This changes everything about where you find them. Smaller trout are forced to feed during the day in positions that are easy to cast to. The largest fish feed at night or hold in spots that seem impossible to reach. Undercut banks, soft edges near heavy current seams, the front face of boulders where the cushioning effect of the current creates a pocket. Most anglers walk right past. A 2019 study by Anderson and Dietz found that when anglers targeted these precise structural positions with small, naturally colored spinners or nymphs, catch rates rose by nearly 40% compared to fishing the middle of the current. This principle scales down beautifully to creek fishing. In small streams, pocket water is king. Tiny pockets of slow water separated by obstacles are the most efficient feeding stations available, with insects and food bits washing over small falls or around rocks, and trout snatching them up without wasting energy. During a mayfly or stonefly hatch, these pockets become absolute feeding lanes, with fish stacking up to intercept drifting nymphs before they even reach the main current. Even in streams you can jump across, there will often be 1 or 2 pools with 4 to 6 feet of depth, and that's more than enough to hold a trophy brown. Trout prefer water depths between 6 inches and 6 feet, and that 6-inch pocket isn't hyperbole. It's where the physics says the fish should be. Reading these microcurrents means reading current seams, the soft edges between fast and slow water. The bubble line on the surface, that accumulation of foam and debris, marks the primary current seam. The convergence that traps bubbles also traps insects, and feeding fish position directly beneath or adjacent to that line. On a good river, from the right vantage point, you can see trout stacked in a single seam, all actively feeding. And wherever you catch one, expect its brother a foot upstream. This is precisely why nymphing techniques, dead drifting a weighted fly through that seam at the exact speed of the current, are so lethal in these microcurrent zones. The drift fishing approach works for the same reason. You're matching the physics of the water column, not fighting it. For lures in these situations, spinners remain devastatingly effective. The Panther Martin Classic, with its shaft running through a concave blade, generates vibration that attracts predators even in poor visibility. But when you're targeting the biggest brown trout in a system, crankbaits change the game. Rapala-style lures with medium or deep lips stay down in faster currents and trigger the predatory instinct of fish that have crossed that passivity threshold. The jerk-twitch pause retrieve mimics an injured baitfish, and it consistently produces the largest fish in a given spot. If you're wading into position to reach these seams, a good pair of waders changes everything about how precisely you can place a lure or fly into those 6-inch pockets without spooking the fish. The stories validate all of this. Tom Healy caught his 41-pound 7-ounce brown trout on the Manistee River in Michigan using a crankbait. Howard Rip Collins landed a 40-pound 4-ounce brown on a jig weighing 1/32 of an ounce with 4-pound test. And Sumas Petrie, whose real name remains unknown because he refused all media attention, caught the current world record of 44 pounds, 5 ounces on a jig with 6-pound test. These fish weren't caught by luck. They were caught by anglers who understood where the water told them to put their lure. Most of these record fish were released after documentation, a catch-and-release ethic that organizations like Trout Unlimited have championed for decades to preserve exactly the kind of trophy fisheries these records came from. The river is not a uniform sheet of moving water. It's a mosaic of microenvironments, each with its own velocity, turbulence signature, and energetic cost. Large turbulent eddies destabilize fish and increase energy expenditure, while small vertically oriented eddies enhance swimming efficiency. The critical size of eddies required to destabilize a fish is approximately equivalent to body length, which means a 20-inch brown trout is perfectly stable in turbulence that would exhaust a 10-inch fish. The biggest fish can hold in places smaller fish literally cannot. Every season reshapes these dynamics. Spring runoff creates dramatic seams with roaring main flows and huge slicks of calm water along the banks. Summer shrinks those seams into subtle divisions behind solitary boulders. Fall brings aggressive feeding as fish bulk up before winter. And mayfly and stonefly activity peaks, making shallow riffle seams prime territory for both nymphing and drift fishing presentations. The next time you stand at the edge of a stream, stop looking for the obvious spots. Look for the 6-inch pocket where the current reverses. Find the cushion in front of the boulder everyone else ignores. Read the bubble line. Feel the seam. The biggest fish in the river isn't hiding. It's positioned at the exact point where physics and biology intersect, where energy expenditure drops to nearly zero and the river delivers food on a conveyor belt of current. That fish has been reading the water its entire life. Your job is to learn to read it too.